Hey folks, no time for a long intro, we've got Monster Hunter Wilds weapon previews to analyze. If you do want a bit more of a spiel, I have already released a video analyzing the first 4 weapon videos to be released, which included the Greatsword, the Heavy Bowgun, the Insect Glaive, and the Gun Lance. Now that the next 5 previews are all out, I will be breaking down all of the weapon actions we see in them with some speculations and side-by-side comparisons with past games. So our list for today will then be the Hunting Horn, Longsword, Charge Blade, Hammer, and Light Bowgun. I tried my best to work a bit ahead in the analysis as the videos were coming out, but since my last video was quite late, I still haven't really caught up. So there's only really one thing to do then. Let's jump into these videos, and I will see you on the other side. First up on our list will be the Hunting Horn. In my last video, I mentioned that I had already seen the Hunting Horn preview while working on it, and while I originally planned for that video to include the first 5 weapon previews, the scope of the changes for the Hunting Horn just felt too large for me to include in that video and still release it in a timely manner. AKA past me decided to make the Hunting Horn future me's problem, and that's me now. Well, as I've been doing with my previous analyses so far, the first order of business is to check out our hunter's gear. This hunter is wearing the classic bone armor with the same design from World. Now the Hunting Horn's design here is a bit more interesting. While this Hunting Horn features a bit of bone in its design, it is not the starter bone Hunting Horn. I know this because we can see the classic bone horn model later in this very showcase. Instead, thanks to seeing a future preview, I now have a confident match for what line this Hunting Horn is in. So we're going to be spoiling what's coming up a little, but in the Longsword weapon showcase, we can see that the weapon has the exact same motifs, including the bone, the scrap metal looking bits, and even the tribal looking designs. And for the Longsword showcase, the weapon is a pretty clear match to the armor, which is almost definitely the Doshaguma armor. Don't want to linger on that too much though, because that's for the next showcase. Coming back to the Hunting Horn, we can pretty confidently identify this as the Doshaguma horn. The musical part of this horn seems to be a drum, and I love how it is surrounded by this scrap metal cage with the rebar spikes. So the first action the hunter performs with the horn is a recital. This recital animation is pretty close to that of the classic Hunting Horn. And when I say classic Hunting Horn, I mean how the Hunting Horn was before Rise. Because in Monster Hunter Rise, the Hunting Horn was reworked to the point of becoming almost unrecognizable. For starters, the recital mechanic was essentially removed, although you could set a switch skill to add back a former vestige of it. While these changes were enjoyed by many, I do think there might have been a sentiment among veteran Hunting Horn players who felt that a lot of the depth was removed from the weapon. Which is perhaps why the devs did actually hint that the Hunting Horn would be reworked in Wilds to be appealing to fans of the weapon. The first thing we see, being a recital, does already show that the Hunting Horn will be almost definitely playing closer to how it used to, but let's see what else there is in store. Here we can see a draw attack, which is the standard forward smash. It looks like this is the classic draw attack from the pre-Rise Hunting Horn, although one change I did love with the Rise Horn was the fact that you could input any of your notes with the draw attack. I'm not sure if this will be a feature in Wilds, but I think it would be nice to see. After this forward smash, our hunter goes straight into a recital. While it appears the hunter has only played one note at this point, we currently don't know if there were other notes stocked up beforehand, so this doesn't tell us that these songs will only require one note. Now, this recital animation is pretty similar to the one we can do in World, where adding a directional input to it will strafe us to the right. The main difference is that at the end of the animation, the hunter in Wilds is holding the horn out in front instead of behind them. While the recital is being played, we can also notice the Hunting Horn emits 2 pulse effects. I wonder if these are representing individual melodies being played, like if the hunter had 2 of them stocked and they were both activated within that time, or maybe these are just damaging shockwaves that make the recital into a more effective way to attack. But now for the real juicy part. After finishing the first recital, in a lightning-fast motion, our hunter bashes the monster in the side of the head before proceeding to play some more music. I believe that this action is a recital encore. With the classic horn, you could perform an encore after a recital to replay the melodies you just performed. However, the animations for the encores were often quite lengthy. Although these animations also functioned as attacks, you would have to commit to quite a window to complete one, and it was all too easy to get interrupted in the middle and fail to complete the performance. But what we are seeing here is way faster than the old Encore animation. If this is indeed an Encore, then that will massively lower the commitment needed to quickly get a full set of buffs active. In a sense, this could be a sort of middle ground between the World Horn and the Rise Horn, still requiring the queuing of melodies, but making them far easier to play mid-combat. If this clip ended here, then I think I would see this as a pretty big change, but as is becoming a theme with these previews, we are just getting started. After playing the Encore performance, our hunter does one more big flourish with a move that I can only describe as a second Encore. Basically, in the time that it previously took for us to perform a melody and an Encore, the Wild's Horn has managed to fit another one in there. This particular animation also seems to deliver 2 nice hits for us, which may just make it super usable offensively. In terms of what effects this second Encore has for us, we can't quite tell. Previously, Hunting Horn melodies could be stacked up to 2 times, while additional plays just refreshed their duration. Perhaps buffs can stack up to 3 times now, or maybe the second Encore just grants a different effect. Maybe it's even purely offensive, using the sonic waves of the horn to deal extra damage. Assuming Wilds does have melodies like the sonic wave available, it might be a viable damage source if we can quickly throw Encores out there. For our next clip, we can observe our hunter busting out the sickest dance moves. I mean, look at this little leg sweep they do, that is super styling. Oh, and also there's like a big echo bubble or something. So I imagine that this dance move will replace the horn spin move added in World, as this was the move used to generate notes to produce echo bubbles. Compared to the echo bubbles in World, however, these ones are quite massive. According to the text, these echo bubbles will be granting special effects in the area. In World, the echo bubbles could contain one of a few buffs depending on the note used to play them, and these would linger and provide the buff to anyone who would walk through them. I think it might be fair to expect a similar behavior with these large echo bubbles, but that said, in this preview, the echo bubbles are performing a different function. In this following clip, we have 2 echo bubbles placed on the ground. Next up, we have our hunter performing a nice little combo that features plenty of moves shared with the World Horn. However, we can notice that for every swing of the horn that produces a note, these echo bubbles emit a sonic wave that we can see is dealing a small amount of damage to the monster. Now this damage doesn't look all that impressive, but then our hunter starts doing a recital. The moment the first melody is played, these echo bubbles trigger and deal a much more substantial amount of damage. But remember, we have access to a fast Encore and the new extra one. So the hunter then moves on to the Encore and the bubbles trigger again. And then we get the final Encore, which seems to trigger a ton of extra damaging hits. So I might have been onto something earlier when I was speculating that being able to play more Encores faster could be useful for spamming sonic wave damage from melodies. Yep, I definitely didn't come up with that idea after seeing this. Alright, let's see. Yep, good to know that the Hunting Horn still buffs your friends. Next. Now, if you were afraid that Wilds would be completely ignoring everything added to the Rise Hunting Horn, then you can rest easy. Because here is Earthshaker, back and cooler than ever in the form of a new Focus Mode weak point attack. Previously, this was a Silkbind move in Rise that let us strum the silk from a wire bug like a guitar to transmit a deadly shockwave directly into the skull of a monster. Now I'm not sure about the mechanics of this version of the move. I'm not sure what I'm questioning more, the fact that there is nothing to transfer the sound into the monster's weak spot, or the fact that our hunter is absolutely shredding on a non-guitar hunting horn. That said, they are absolutely killing it, so who am I to stop them? Okay, what we have next is a move that is similar to one we have seen before, but its presence here has actually raised a few questions. You see, this animation is pretty similar to the World Horn's Clutch Claw attack added in Iceborne. It is a quite awesome animation where we kinda swing on the horn like it is a giant lever. But the fact is that I'm pretty sure we do not have confirmation that the Clutch Claw will be returning in Wilds, and I also think that a lot of us aren't really expecting it to return. So maybe this attack is our new mount finisher, or otherwise it could just be a move that lets us briefly grab the monster to perform it. On to the last couple clips, we have now swapped our hunting horn to the bone model horn, and I am wondering as to the reason for this. The move that is being performed here is actually yet another spin on a Rise move. This animation closely resembles the Rise Silkbind slide beat. The original function of this move was a fancy little attack that could close distances and give you some hyper armor while also activating self-improvement. In this footage, it seems like completing this move triggers some powerful shockwaves that send the monster reeling. Although notably, we still have the echo bubbles active, which are probably contributing to that as well. The question that remains is, why was a different hunting horn chosen for this clip? In these types of showcases, this is only done when demonstrating an ability not present on the original weapon. For a weapon like the hunting horn, this would likely come in the form of a different song selection on the horn. I can't imagine that the bone horn would be capable of performing this move while the Doshagama one can't, so perhaps what is different is the melody being played after it. While it seems that both horns were able to create the sonic wave echo bubble, my guess is that the bone horn has a dedicated sonic waves melody that is being played by the horn directly at the end of this move, creating this huge burst. Rounding out the preview, we have one more extremely stylish new move. This sees our hunter wind up with a fancy backwards cartwheel which could function as a backwards evade, right before unleashing a full body swing of the horn that also seems to create a huge shockwave. Don't really have too much information on the context that we can perform this move in, but the more cool moves we have, the better. And that should do it for the hunting horn. I actually don't think I had quite as much to analyze as I originally thought. The overall flow of the weapon definitely feels closer to the World Horn than Rise's, but it almost feels like they picked out some of the coolest features from the Rise Horn and added them to this one. While the general playstyle will feel more familiar to World players, it looks like it will be much easier to play melodies offensively, which was a mechanic that was likely hard to master for many. Overall, this looks like a pretty good balance between the more complex World Horn and the more fluid Rise Horn. Will that convince more people to try the weapon in Wilds? Only time will tell, but I'm sure everyone will be happy to see one on their team. We will be moving on to the 6th weapon showcase. Definitely a fan favorite among weapons, we have the longsword. And right off the bat, we have one of the cooler looking armors and weapons shown off so far. As we saw in the sneak peek of this gear earlier, we determined that this is most definitely gear from the Doshagama, which we can tell from the bright yellow fur. And I am loving this combination of monster parts with the sort of scrap metal material. And this sort of contrast is giving me almost a Mad Max vibe, which is extremely sweet. Jumping right into some moves, the first clip is a little preview of a familiar longsword move, the EI Slash. After being introduced in Iceborne and made even more powerful in Rise, this move is now a staple of the weapon, embodying the concept of countering attacks with expert precision. Onto the first main clip, what we are seeing here is a standard spirit combo, except it's actually a bit different. The first hit in the combo is a non-spirit attack, just a little poke that is handy for quickly linking attacks together. Now the next attack is a spirit attack, as we can tell from the glow emitted by the hunter and the distinct sound effect. But this is no spirit attack we have been able to perform before. This attack is accompanied by a swift sidestep. We could compare this attack to the fade slashes we could perform before, which allow us to attack while repositioning. However, the classic fade slashes were not spirit attacks. The fact that we now have a spirit attack that also lets us reposition could be extremely useful for maintaining an advantageous position against the monster, while also being able to continue leveling up the spirit gauge. Immediately after this spirit step slash, we have yet another new spirit attack, this one allowing us to step forward and perform 2 slashes. This attack does remind me slightly of the spirit follow-up we could do after a fade slash, but this one's got an extra slash on it. And the final 2 attacks after this are the classic moves to end a spirit combo. In terms of the number of moves needed to complete this new spirit combo, we still have 4 like the classic combo, but this combo includes both additional hits and has more potential for repositioning. This next clip is a return of another classic longsword move, the Foresight Slash. Another move introduced in World, this is a very effective way to counter attacks and then quickly level up your spirit gauge. The behavior on this one seems completely identical to how it's been. Next up, we've got some fancy combo action. First, we'll perform an EI Sheath, we then do the EI Step Slash, which is a quick pair of hits that lets our spirit gauge start to increase automatically. As the UI shows in this clip, it seems that this is still going to be the case in Wilds. After this, we have another new Spirit Slash that strafes us to the left while performing 2 slashes. Finally, we go back into the standard 2 final moves of the Spirit combo. And this actually shows us that the EI slash allowed us to shorten our spirit combo by one move, which is just how it worked before, with the only difference being the new spirit fade slash we were able to perform. Okay, now things are about to get pretty spicy. First, we have even more new spirit attacks. This first spirit attack is a forward overhead slash, and the second one is a quick double slash. Both of the attacks also saw our hunter quickly step forward. I think what this is telling us is that our first two spirit attacks will allow for directional input and will become different attacks that move us in the direction we selected. The rest of the combo is as we've seen, that is, until our spirit gauge turns red. As the text states, when the spirit gauge is red, some attacks will be strengthened. And immediately after the spirit round slash that levels the gauge up, the hunter immediately performs a brand new follow-up that lets them turn 180 degrees and attack. Moving forward, our hunter is now performing another brand new combo. These are likely some of the new strengthened attacks from the red spirit gauge. And interestingly, these do not seem to be spirit attacks, as we do not hear the usual sound effect. So maybe this is just what the longsword's basic combo becomes once we have a red gauge. I do like this change as an incentive to get the red gauge and keep it instead of maybe immediately spending it with a Helmbreaker. So far, I feel like I've kind of been rapid firing through this preview, but the changes we have seen have felt pretty awesome. I'm loving the increased focus on positioning through the extra directional control of the spirit slashes. But we haven't even touched the focus mode mechanics yet. What we have here feels like one of the focus mode attacks designed to target weak points. First, we perform a quick stab and slash combo aimed at a weak spot. I can't tell for sure, but I have a feeling that we have to land this attack on a weak point to enable this next bit. Right after the first attack, our hunter then assumes a very samurai-like stance, holding the sword vertically, and does a super swift down-up swing that in true anime fashion triggers a delayed hit. Although we can't see the spirit gauge during this clip, if we look closely at the sword after this hit triggers, we can see it turn red, so maybe this move is a new way for us to quickly level up the spirit gauge. Okay, we are now in the rapid fire clip part of the preview. First up is the EI Spirit Slash, which we got a peek at right at the start of the video, and now we can see the move being used to counter an attack as it has been able to do in the past, looking quite awesome as usual. And now we have a usage of the Spirit Helmbreaker, another returning move, which I would say is functioning as it used to, except for, well... yeah, I guess we needed to make that move even more anime. And we've got one more new move in this last clip. Our hunter takes up a flashy stance and performs a quick round slash. Now this particular stance looks rather suspicious, and just from the way that the hunter very deliberately pauses on this stance, as well as the distinctive white flash we see, I feel like if an attack were to connect with them right at this moment, they would be able to counter it. But that will actually go ahead and wrap up our longsword preview. As expected, the weapon is just as flashy as ever. That said, I am digging the new focus on repositioning that we seem to be having with a lot of the new moves. Maybe in Wilds, longsword mains will be able to reposition themselves away from me so I don't get tripped all the time. That was a joke, we know that's not gonna happen. Hey, Capcom? Who gave you permission to just casually drop gear so utterly stylish in the likes of a weapon preview video? Like, I mean, y'all are seeing this, right? This looks like a set that would be added to the game 2 years later as paid DLC. But here it is, just showing up next to your starter bone and/or early game monster gear. In all seriousness, I have to say that if I had any reservations about the uniqueness of the weapon designs after seeing the insect glaive, those are all but gone at this point. Now it does look like I was correct about identifying a spiderweb motif in this design back when I saw it as a silhouette. That said, this gear is also not a match for any spider monster we know of, so we are very likely in for the treat of a brand new spider monster in Wilds. Given the super elegant and refined style of this gear, I am curious if that sort of personality will transfer to the monster itself. Oh, by the way, we're here to talk about the Chargeblade weapon preview. I guess it's time to do that. So far out of all the previews, this video has been the longest. One might think that this is because the Chargeblade gets the most changes that need to be covered. Well, actually, it seems that the majority of this video's runtime is needed to simply explain all of the base features of the weapon, because that's just kinda how the Chargeblade is. This first main clip in the video is entirely a combo that has existed for the classic Charge Blade. So far there is nothing new here. In the next clip, the Charge Blade's default functionality is still being explained. Now we have a demonstration of the weapon's files being charged. Next up, we morph into axe mode and perform an overhead chop, and finally, we then get to see our first new move. After the morph slash, our hunter performs a forward moving file charge slash. This seems to be used in place of the old move known as Element Discharge 1. The old move was a quick side swipe that could also be used while stepping forward slightly. This new one, on the other hand, is a much wider swipe that also has more forward movement. It almost feels like a fusion of the old Element Discharge with the non-file using running overhead axe chop. Following the new Element Discharge 1, we have Element Discharge 2, which seems to be working as it used to. This move was always a favorite of mine, giving you 2 file hits for the price of 1 and allowing for an infinitely loopable combo. Next up, we've got more axe gameplay, but this time we are doing the full Element Discharge combo. We open with our new Element Discharge 1, then move to Element Discharge 2, and then finally we pull out Element Discharge 3, or what's it called nowadays, the Amped Element Discharge. Either way, this move is behaving the same way that it used to. But hold on, now introducing, for the first time in history, get ready for Element Discharge 4. This move actually looks stylish as heck, and I think it has pretty big implications for the standard axe combo. Oftentimes, the default amped element discharge was a move that was often avoided because it ends your combo and locks you into a pretty slow ending animation. However, if we can now follow it up with an even stronger move, that could make committing to the full element discharge combo seem a bit more appealing. Alright, I guess that was enough excitement for a while. Let's get back to continuing to explain the Charge Blade's basic mechanics. So this full clip is dedicated to explaining how to charge your shield with files. As far as I can tell, no new behaviors here. And after the shield is charged, we then get an explanation on how to charge the sword. Once again, this is the exact same behavior from World. One thing that is worth pointing out, however, is that we have icons on the UI to represent which parts of the Charge Blade have been charged. At this point, we have a charged shield and a charged sword. But there is one extra icon here, it is an axe. We don't actually see the axe get quote-unquote charged in this preview, but this is confirming that the axe itself will have some sort of charged state. And we can make a good guess that the axe's charged state will actually be an equivalent to World's Savage Axe mode, or similarly Rise's Condensed Spinning Slash mode. As a big fan of making the axe spin around like a pizza cutter, you'll hear no complaints from me. Oh, but speaking of the pizza cutter mode, let's take a look at this focus mode attack. This move, likely being our weak point attack, sees us do a series of quick jumping slashes with the sword, but immediately after, we have a quick swap to axe, and you guessed it, it's time to start pizza cuttering. So I definitely love the way this move looks. In my opinion, this has to be one of the more brutal ways to tear up a monster's weak spot. I guess we've finally earned the privilege to see some cool clips now. Here's another one. This move, I'm pretty sure, is our third example of seeing a well-timed guard counter. Originally, I thought this was just our classic morph slash guard point, but it definitely looks like this counter is just performed with a regular block done with good timing. By the way, as a slight tangent, does anyone remember adept-style guards from Monster Hunter Generations? This is probably the closest example we have to what we are seeing with these well-timed guards that chain into counterattacks. When playing adept style with a shield weapon, we can notice this unique animation where the hunter does a little shield flourish. And maybe I'm just seeing things, but in the examples we have of the Charge Blade blocking, it almost looks like the hunter is doing the same shield movement, although it is a bit more subtle. Even going back to the Gunlance showcase, we can almost see this same flourish when guarding as well. Anyways, when our hunter blocks the monster attack at the last second, we can once again hear this trademark sound effect that is heard in the past examples of this. This then lets us smoothly transition into an upward axe swing. Okay, now what we have here for the second time so far in these previews is a sneak attack. The only other time we've seen this was in the Greatsword showcase, which we could identify by the zoom in and the unique sound effect. I'm sure that the other weapon types also have sneak attacks like this, but they just weren't shown off. And we have one final clip remaining in this showcase. Although the showcase took a bit to get going, it looks like we've picked up a nice collection of cool new moves for the weapon, and it seems like they have saved the best for last. The first part of this clip is once again our new element discharge 4, as I'm calling it. When we first saw this move, we may have thought that it was a new combo finisher as it followed up the amped element discharge. But it turns out that might not be the case at all, because here we can go from element discharge 4 right into the super amped element discharge. And admittedly, this isn't something I noticed on my own, but I had seen talk about the point right before chaining into the SAED potentially being a new guard point, and I could see that being the case as our axe is held pretty prominently out in front of us. I could imagine, even if we don't chain into the SAED, it is the points at the end of the element discharge 4 that can be used as a guard point. Kinda similar to how there is a guard point at the end of the sword round slash. And so, we have a super stylish way to chain into the SAED, although I have to wonder, if you perform a full file discharge combo into it, won't you be left over with just one file for the finisher? It looks like the one we see in this clip releases plenty of explosions though, so maybe this particular instance of the move is able to be performed from a different path, or alternatively, the SAED could just use one file to produce the full burst. At any rate, it is looking pretty dang awesome. And so, that will wrap up our Charge Blade preview. Admittedly, when I was watching through this a few times, I was a little underwhelmed, but I think that's just because so much of the runtime was spent showing the weapon's pre-existing mechanics. For the new stuff we did see, I do really like the improved axe combos. I think there will be a lot more fluidity in axe mode now, and I am confident that there is much more that this highly complex weapon is hiding. We are now onto the 4th weapon preview for this video and the 8th one overall. And this one will be featuring everybody's favorite bonk stick, the king of the KOs, the hammer. And apparently, the team has to keep one-upping themselves with the gear designs in each subsequent video, because we've got this whole mad scientist look going on here. This hammer is particularly crazy with the whole Plague Doctor mask and Frankenstein-esque bolts, and of course the pulsing glowing brain in the middle of it. I absolutely love this. For the armor on the other hand, while I can still see the mad scientist theme in it, the puffy coat going on with it feels like a slightly odd combination. At any rate, no idea what monster this could be from. The bird theme from the Plague Doctor motifs could have this be a new bird wyvern possibly, and my guess from the general mad scientist theme with the tubes full of mysterious liquid as well as the beak of the hammer being stained with a purple sludge makes me think that this monster may use the poison status. Okay, right, we've got some weapon footage to break down. Onto the first clip, this is the hammer's basic combo, consisting of 2 hammer pounds followed by the classic golf swing. And this is how the hammer's basic combo has functioned in the past, except one thing is different. It's kinda easy to miss, but right after the first hammer pound, our hunter performs a quick sidestep. Now this is some brand new tech, giving us the ability to slightly reposition mid-combo. This seems like one of those changes that feels subtle, but in practice makes a world of difference in helping you complete combos. You know, it does feel like giving weapons more tools for controlling your position is becoming a theme with the new weapon changes in Wilds. So next up, we've got some footage showcasing the hammer's classic ability to charge attacks while moving, except holy cow, that is the Keeping Sway Silkbind from Rise that they just casually added to the weapon. What we are seeing here is, while the hunter is charging the hammer, they are able to throw out the hook slinger to grapple a short distance forward. This is a nice bit of extra movement, but what is huge here is that the hammer's charge level is preserved during this movement. When this move was a Silkbind in Rise, it wasn't bad, but not really worth the skill slot and wirebug cost. If we are indeed just getting this move for free, then that seems like a huge upgrade for the hammer's mobility. Moving on to the actual charge attack, this is behaving as it used to, being the standard level 3 charge when performed at a standstill. And I'm getting a bit of deja vu here. This clip is showing the exact same charge attack, but without the extra keeping sways. At least, I think there's nothing different about this. I suppose we can move on from this one. Now for a fan favorite hammer move. This is the classic Big Bang combo. Possibly the most straightforward hammer move. When in doubt, just bonk the monster with the hammer over and over again. There is one detail that I am curious about in this footage though. Midway through the combo, the hunter does appear to get clipped by Chatacabra's tongue sweep. However, they are unfazed and continue smashing away. This makes me curious if this combo now has some additional hyper armor. But this might not actually tell us all that much, as the tongue sweep attack could easily be a low knockback move, and most hammer moves already come with a small amount of knockback protection. So most likely, I think this combo is unchanged. Alright, time to get into the juicy focus mode stuff. The move we are seeing here is likely our specialized weak point attack, and this one seems to be a modified version of the hammer's spinning charge attack. The motion of this attack just feels a lot more controlled and weighty than the old spin attack, and this one ends with a nice brutal downward slam, looking very awesome. Okay, this next clip is a short one, but something pretty big seems to be happening here. We are missing a bit of context for the lead-in to this move, but it looks like the hunter is in the process of winding up a really strong upswing. And this seems like another case, similar to what we've seen with other weapons, where we intercept a monster's attack to send them reeling. Of course, it is hard to tell with the hammer because any good hit with the weapon could potentially KO a monster, but I feel like this backwards stagger animation is similar to the one we've seen in the other cases. So perhaps this is another move that could potentially function as a counterattack. Now next up, here's our keeping sway-like grapple move again, and now finally onto one more big move. What we have here appears to be a new kind of charge where we spin the hammer like crazy as part of the charge itself. I really like this. It's like we're building up a bunch of extra momentum, and maybe we can use this animation as an extra attack while charging. After the charge is complete, we unleash a strong attack that shares an animation with the level 3 charge attack from the hammer's power charge moveset. As we had not seen any examples of the power charge mechanic in this preview, I'm curious if this is actually the new power charge behavior. Perhaps activating the power charge now changes the charge animation into this awesome swinging motion. But that will go ahead and wrap up the hammer preview. I think I am really the most excited for the new hook grapple that we can seemingly do at any point. As the hammer is a weapon that has very few defensive options, giving it the mobility to maintain good spacing when focusing on a monster's head will help tremendously with staying aggressive. We are on to the final weapon for this analysis video. As I only did 4 weapons in my last video, this video is most likely going to be longer. But at least I'm actually finishing up my script on the day this preview has come out. Of course, I still gotta record all the voiceover and do the editing, so the actual video will probably still be a few days late. Sorry about that. Anyways, here is the light bowgun. So, this bowgun is pretty clearly of the local starter weapon line, featuring a bunch of cool leather details on the design. Now for the armor, I'm not actually familiar with the design for the female version of this set, but the male version on the splash screen looks pretty close to the classic hunter's armor, although even that looks slightly different. So maybe we're looking at a more revamped basic hunter's armor set here. Okay, so during the heavy bowgun showcase, we saw that the heavy bowgun will be capable of the classic light bowgun style rapid fire for basic shots, so I was hoping that the light bowgun would have more to set it apart then. From what we can see right off the bat, it looks like we are already well on track to do that. First, we have some rapid fire shots, and look at the speed of these bursts. In addition, we of course have much faster general movements, the swift hop evades, and look how quick this reload is too. There is a bit more of the same in this next clip, but we also have an example of the light bowgun's slide evade, which is a returning feature useful for some extra mobility. Similar to the heavy bowgun's new ignition mode, the light bowgun seems to have a new mode of its own. For this mode, we've got ourselves a big old drum mag attachment that lets us fire even faster. Now compared to ignition mode, one difference seems to be that this mode actually consumes the bowgun's standard ammo. As we can see on the UI, for each burst fired, we consume 1 shot of ammo in addition to the rapid fire energy. The behavior of these shots is pretty cool. As we can see, we are able to fire these bursts while also evading at the same time. I think the light bowgun has been able to do this a few times before, but not quite to this degree. It also looks like in exchange for taking a stationary stance, we can fire out even more shots in a single burst with this mode. And just like ignition mode, we can see here that this energy will regenerate over time and by successfully landing hits. It does feel like these modes for both the light and heavy bowgun will be a more major part of the weapon than the special ammos were before. Speaking of special ammos, however, we do in fact still seem to have the Wyvern Blasts available for the light bowgun. While the heavy bowgun seemed to incorporate its special ammo types into the ignition mode, it looks like the light bowgun has the Wyvern Blasts available as a separate feature. I believe this is the case because in the previous clip, when we have a segment of the UI visible, we can notice this extra ammo icon that seems to have the same shape as the classic Wyvern Blast ammo icon. Function-wise, it looks like the Wyvern Blast is still behaving identically to its previous functionality. Up next, we will be incorporating focus mode into all this. The focus mode attack in this clip seems to be some sort of charged explosive shot. Now interestingly, before performing this special shot, we seem to load a different ammo type, and we can notice the ammo counter update to one that only has 3 total shots. So I'm wondering if this special shot behavior we are getting is a feature of focus mode or the ammo type, or maybe even some combination of both. At any rate, very cool looking move, and I love how the recoil makes our hunter do a little backflip. Now that we're nearly at the end of the preview here, it is time for the rapid fire clips. No pun intended. So here we have what definitely feels like a mounted finisher. We've only had a few other previews show any mounted actions, but this one feels the most like a full mounted finisher animation of the ones we've seen so far. Compared to how the bowgun mounted finishers looked in World, this one is far more epic looking, like straight out of an action movie. I love it. And this next clip is another instance of our ability to shoot while evading at the same time. And this one seems a bit different in that I think a shot with a higher recoil was used in the volley, because we can see that after the shots are fired, our hunter goes tumbling backwards. Now for the final clip, I believe this is another example of the ability we saw where we can take that crouching stance to fire even more shots in our rapid fire volley. But that is going to do it for the light bowgun preview. So compared to the heavy bowgun, I am really liking how the light bowgun is getting more of a focus on laying down a lot of fire while staying highly mobile. And finally, we will be rounding out this weapon preview analysis. This makes a total of 9 of the 14 weapons in Monster Hunter Wilds that I have taken a look at here. Overall, I'm loving practically all of the new changes I've been seeing. A pattern I've been seeing is an emphasis on increased mobility, but more in the context of repositioning than being able to fly all over the screen. I think this may lend combat a very nice feel where it still feels grounded and deliberate, but you have the freedom to space yourself and strike with precision. So I look forward to the remaining 5 weapon previews that we'll be releasing. I'll be doing my best to try to keep up with them and have a video covering them shortly after the last one drops. Of course, after that, we will start getting even more info about the game once people start playing it. For now, however, I already need to catch up as I need to get this video out, so I suppose I ought to say, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.